Today's topic is the eternal pilgrimage. It's said that one of the greatest tragedies of modern life is the problem of loneliness, our inability to enjoy the bliss of solitude, the feeling that we are alone in this world. You often find, if you visit old age homes, daycare homes, you find many of the elder members of society expressing a feeling of despair when they look back towards the earlier years of their life. There is no greater tragedy than this feeling of despair. When we look back, we feel that we didn't make full use of the opportunities that life presented before us. That's why one great thinker said that the wise man or the wise woman doesn't sit by the roadside, but he or she takes a decision early in their life, plan their life. There's an old Vedantic tradition which says that our activities in secular life should be guided by a central guiding principle. It's called dharma. There are 4 fundamental values in life: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. These are the old Sanskrit terms, which means dharma stands not just for ethical or moral values, but certain fundamental values that preserve the rhythm of life, not only human life, but the life of the planets, life of the universe, which if we violate, will affect the balance of life in this world. For example, if we cut down the trees, it upsets the ecological balance, it affects the climate. When we pollute the air or water, or when we pollute through sound pollution, all these will affect the inherent balance and harmony of life in this world. So the word dharma has got a much higher and deeper implication, higher than just an ethical and moral value, something without which we cannot exist in this world, something which sustains the rhythm of life, sustains life and also existence. Truth is, for example, is one dimension of this dharma in our daily life. Morality is another dimension. Love, harmony, integrity, peace, all these are different shades of this principle of dharma. Now, life to be meaningful, to be a pilgrimage, should be guided by this principle of dharma. That's the old Vedantic view. The ultimate goal is moksha, liberation. Moksha doesn't necessarily mean death or heaven, but rather going beyond the empirical, going beyond this cycle of birth, life, death, and of course, rebirth. We come to a stage where we transcend the empirical, transcend the psychophysical dimension of our life. We become one with the eternal, omnipresent Spirit. This is the real implication of moksha, liberation, in both Buddhism and also in Vedanta. In Buddhism also, when we completely transcend the pratitya samutpada, that 12-link cycle through which we all evolve, move from stage to stage. In Vedanta, going beyond the psychophysical process of evolution. So at the one end we have dharma, at the other end we have moksha. Now, when you take a human body, when you work in the office for 12 hours of the day, when you have to live in a family or a society, when you have to do shopping, driving, and engage in all secular activities, you cannot always make sure that you are moving towards liberation. In fact, there is a theory, that is a very misguided theory, that too much of obsession with the transcendental will make you inherently inefficient. One anthropologist, who cannot be accused of being impartial, of course, he made a statement. He says, the Catholic countries of Southern Europe, like Portugal, Spain, and Italy, and also some of the Latin American countries like Argentina and Brazil, they register a lower rate of economic growth due to Catholic values, which insist on certain fundamental religious values. So Protestant nations like Germany, the Scandinavian countries, Britain, all these are much more advanced because they have shaken off the shackles of dharma. Dharma means certain eternal spiritual value. This dharma ideal is not a principle confined to Oriental tradition. Dharma exists in Jewish, Islamic, and Christian, all traditions. So one view is that if you give importance to certain principles of dharma, like family structure, the sanctity of the institution of marriage and all this, it will lower the economic growth rate. It's a theory put forward by a modern anthropologist. Now, the point is, according to Vedantic tradition, life is not a journey from dharma to moksha. Vedanta philosophy recognizes the need and the importance of going through the process of artha and kama. These are two values which are second and third. First one is dharma, the last one is moksha, fourth one. Between these two, there are two fundamental values. One is artha and kama. Artha really means means. Money, status, social security, all these belong to the dimension of artha, the realm of artha. We need many things to be able to live in this world. So we have to struggle hard, all this. And also people have different desires, different ambitions. It's called kama. Kama means certain ambitions, goals to be achieved, to be attained. Now, the Vedantic tradition insists that our pursuit of means and desires, goals, should not violate the principles of dharma. That is one important point. If we stick to the principles of dharma and pursue the path of utilitarian value, secular values, economic and social values, then we can achieve life, prosperity and economic fulfillment, happiness in this secular life without upsetting the rhythm, without deviating the path of dharma, and then we come to the last stage, which is called liberation or moksha. Liberation should be understood. Any desire, any concept of a higher spiritual goal. something that goes beyond the empirical, beyond the present day utilitarian needs and achievements. Now, the question is, for many people, life is not an integral journey. For many people, life is a series of disconnected, isolated events. We are not able to see an inner harmony, a unifying threads, unifying different events in our life. So what really happens is, every event is looked upon as an accident, which is totally disconnected and isolated from other events. So we live only in the present. There is a great danger in the philosophy of living at the present. And also there is a great hope. If you look upon the present as the only thing to be cared for, then we may stumble upon utilitarianism, because there is a great danger. Make the best of whatever is available today, right now, not looking beyond. Such a person will not look beyond himself. He will not look beyond his family. He will not look beyond his own selfish interest. So that's one danger of living at the present. This is becoming a very popular maxim in modern times. There is a great risk in following this idea. Of course, this same principle can be interpreted in a different way. That's what I'm coming to now. So living at the present, living at the moment, means, for many people, not looking beyond the present, not looking beyond today, which means not looking beyond himself or herself, which is cutthroat selfishness. But there is another way of looking at the same maxim, same axiom. Well, if you look upon the present as the only thing, that present is constantly changing. Every moment is isolated from every other moment. In that case, there should be something behind all this. There should be something beyond the relative, the changing, the changeless realities beyond all this. So what is that? So the Vedanta calls it Atman, or consciousness, which is the essence of dharma, which is the essence of moksha. So one can look at the present and live at the present, but without forgetting that behind all this, there is an eternal ideal, spiritual ideal for which we live. Now, coming to pilgrimage, the idea of pilgrimage. What's the real meaning of pilgrimage? Life can be looked upon as a pilgrimage, and you can also interpret the ritualistic process of pilgrimage. First, I shall come to the latter one. What is it that makes a pilgrim center, a pilgrimage meaningful? I can quote one very ancient Sanskrit verse. It is from an ancient, most probably 5th or 6th century BC devotional classic. It's called Narada Bhakti Sutras. You may get a copy here in our bookstore. The sutra, the statement is Tirthi Kurvanti Tirthani. Simple statement. The meaning is this. When you go to Lourdes, or when you go to maybe Mecca, or when you go to the place where Buddha was born, Lumbini, or when you go to Benares, Kashi. Now, when you go to all these places, when you go to some of the Himalayan pilgrim centers, or some of the ancient churches associated with the mystics of medieval times in Europe, now you feel that there is something in that place which we can intensely feel, but may not be able to fully explain. So this great philosopher Narada, that's the name of the author of this book, he says, constant association of great saints and sages and devotees create a vibration, or a series of spiritual vibration, which makes that place holy, vibrating with spiritual ideas. So when we go there, these ideas will enter our mind and influence. If we are beginners in spiritual life, we'll be highly benefited, because the place is conducive for spiritual practices. Our mind becomes naturally calm and quiet and tranquil, and there is a meditative air about that place. That's that makes a pilgrim center, holy and serene. Now, which means constant association of great saints and sages will make a place holy and sacred. And when we go there, we are spiritually benefited by the atmosphere prevailing in that place, which is conducive to spiritual life. Our mind becomes naturally calm and quiet. This could happen also when you go to some sublime natural phenomena, when you are living in a valley or a mountain or riverside, because the glory of nature points to the glory of its creator. Maybe one classical example in modern times is Emerson himself, whom I discussed in the last class. That's why sometimes in his philosophy is interpreted as some kind of spiritual, mystical pantheism, in which you equate nature with God. The idea is nature in all its sublimity, beauty and grandeur point to a great creator, a great transcendental power who is responsible for this phenomena. There's an ancient verse in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It's a very famous verse. There's a long dialogue between a great woman philosopher, Gargi, and a great sage philosopher. His name is Yajnavalkya. So, in one context, Yajnavalkya tells Gargi, look here, Gargi, you look at these mountains, valleys, oceans, rivers, the huge trees, the sunrise, the sunset, the galaxies and Milky Ways. Now, don't you think that behind the apparent chaos, there is an inherent harmony behind them? See, a scientist looking at a flower may not see much beauty in it. He may maybe take it out one by one and may practically destroy it. Destruction according to poet. But a poet may read something else in that flower. Now, Yajnavalkya here says, this earth or the universe should not be looked upon as something from where you can get gold and coal, or you can plant a tree, plenty of fruits and enjoy. Yajnavalkya says, if you look beyond the present, beyond the empirical, you find that these mighty mountains, valleys and rivers point to a great transcendental power without whom they cannot exist. If you look from one angle, you feel all these are isolated, fractured, disconnected things. But he says, behind them, behind this chaos, there is an integrating, harmonizing rhythm, a sequence, a unifying thread. And that he calls Hiranyagarbha. That means the cosmic energy, which is a dimension of Atman. You find this long discussion in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Now the point is, similarly, behind the apparent disconnected events in our life, there is an inner purpose behind. If we can recognize that purpose sufficiently early in life, then life itself can become an eternal pilgrimage. Otherwise, life can also become an adventure, and it can also become a misadventure ending with a total despair. These are different interpretations. That's why, as I said earlier, one great philosopher once said that the intelligent person who understands the real purpose of life, who understands that all activities, all secular activities should be guided and should be guided by and according to a fundamental guiding principle called dharma, then life becomes a pilgrimage. Otherwise, it becomes an adventure. It could become a misadventure. That's why sometimes at the end of the journey, when we look back, when you become 80-year-old, 90-year-old, you need not become that old, of course. It's possible even at a much earlier age. When you look back, what did I achieve? What did I earn? You may have worked hard, trillions of dollars in bank, but what is that money after all? Only a figure in the computer screen, nothing else really speaking. You cannot eat all the trillions of dollars. We can consume only for what our body permits us to consume. And normally people who work too hard all their life, without this guiding principle of dharma, will not have much physical and mental health to consume much when they get old. Because the anxiety, the hyperactivity will make them sufficiently incapable of enjoying not even trillions of dollars, even a few dollars a day. So, the point is this, life should be guided by an important guiding principle, dharma. That's why these are four fundamental values: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. In fact, one great German Indologist who was responsible for the first complete edition of Rig Veda, the oldest Vedic literature in modern times, was Max Muller. He was, to begin with, according to some tradition, which is almost confirmed by now, is that he was really a missionary. And his purpose was to publish Vedic literature, so that the whole world will understand how absolutely ridiculous Vedic philosophy is. But then once he started reading, incidentally he never went to India. He was mostly living in London, but he had the help of many great scholars. When he started reading some of these great verses in the Vedic literature, Gita and so on, he became almost a fanatical Vedanti. He became such a great admirer of Vedantic tradition, a great convert, in that he forgot his family life, he forgot everything, and practically he lived and breathed every day only for propagating the philosophy of Vedanta. He says in his long introduction to Rig Veda Samhita, first edition, he says, one of the greatest contributions of Vedic way of life, Vedic tradition, is presentation of human life as a natural, inherent pilgrimage from artha through kama towards moksha, but always guided by dharma. That's what he says. He interpreted not as a philosopher, as a mystic, but as a person, as a man representing the common people. What is the greatest contribution of Vedic way of life? According to him, it is this: the insistence that we can enjoy life in this world. He was not speaking on behalf of mystics or mendicants. He was speaking on behalf of people who have their secular duties and responsibilities in everyday life. And he said, there is only one way that we can avoid falling into utilitarianism. That is by being guided by the principle of dharma. As I said earlier, the dharma has got three dimensions. In our moral, ethical life, it functions as truthfulness. In our emotional life, it functions as a kind of integrity, being honest and also true to oneself. And at the cosmic level, the same dharma functions as a thread, as a unifying, harmonizing power that integrates the whole phenomenon of human life, universe, and also seasons. So, in the Rigveda Samhita, there is a statement which says, sunrise and sunset, days and weeks, half months, which is called Paksha in Sanskrit. Masa means month, year, and then different ages. If you look at it from modern scientific point of view, so the world, the universe came into existence millions of years back. Then slowly, an appropriate condition, environment evolved on this planet so that human beings, other living beings could live. But again, maybe after millions of years, it may go back into another form. That this will not be lost. So this coming and going back, projection and going back to the causal form, only to re-emerge, manifesting as the gross form. So creation, existence, dissolution, and coming back into existence called reprojection. Now, behind this, there is a sequence. So, at a philosophical level, this dharma functions as a unifying thread of cosmic life. So long as we adjust our activities, our thoughts, and our behavior, everything about our life, making it conducive to the principles of dharma, then we won't have to despair at the end of our life. So in our pursuit of artha and kama should be in accordance with this principle of dharma. Now, there is a famous verse in Shankaracharya's Sanskrit poetry, which gives the picture of what happens if we do not pay attention to this principle of dharma. It's called Siva Bharadhakshamapana Stotram. It's a Sanskrit hymn. I shall interpret this condition, the predicament of modern man's life, in the light of this verse. It is so relevant. After that, I shall quote another verse which gives a solution to this problem, to this predicament. The first verse is this: Ayur nasyati pasyadam pradidinam yadikshayam yauvanam pratyayanti gataha punarna divasaha kalo jagadbhakshaka lakshmi stoya taranga bhanga chavala vidyutchulam jeevitam tasmat tumma sharanagadam sharanadattvam raksha rakshadhana. This is a verse I should translate. Now, there is one important principle that is mentioned here. Kalo jagad bhakshaka. Time is defined. What is time? Time is something that consumes the universe, consumes our life. Jagat means universe, but Jagat also could mean the world as we understand it. And what is the world that we understand it? If you live for 90 years, the world is only 90 years old for us, so far as we are concerned. So every day, age is going back. Daily span of life gets decreasing. Our lifespan decreases every day. Ayur nasyati, every day, pratidinam. And then what happens? We are proud of our health and energy when we are young. When we are young, we forget that there is such a thing as death. And even when we get old, unfortunately, we try to reverse the evolution of human mechanism by struggling to blacken the hair and whiten the teeth. But that doesn't really pose a great challenge to time, because time is the consumer, the eater of the universe, eater of life. What is time? One very interesting philosophical definition of time. Time is a great glutton. And what does it eat? It eats our life. So every day this is happening. But we forget. Forgetfulness, as I said on another occasion, can be a great blessing. Without the ability to forget, we cannot live in this world. We should forget many things even to maintain our psychological health. But forgetfulness also can be a great source of trouble. We forget the fact the youth, beauty, energy, and strength will one day disappear. That may give us confidence for the time being, but the price we have to pay for that confidence is total, in the form of total despair after a few decades. So Shankaracharya makes this statement. Every day, lifespan decreases, youth disappears, and days disappear, they will never return. And what happens? Time swallows the whole universe. It consumes, it eats up the whole universe. But then we forget Lakshmi Toya Tarangam Bhangam. See, Toya Tarangam, Toya means water. See, waves in an ocean. Waves can never remain permanent. Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth. So wealth can never remain steady even for a minute. Minute according to the calculation, the whole lifetime, maybe for a few years. They come and they go. But the mystery of life is we forget that. Often we forget what is certain and obvious, and we remember what is uncertain and not so obvious. What we often forget is the only thing that is certain, that is obvious. We can never forget we can never be oblivious. We can never really be blind to the reality of death or disappearance of wealth and beauty and youth when we look around, unless the person is a cutthroat utilitarian or Epicurean. But then we forget for a minute. And then we do not make an attempt to follow the principles of dharma. They follow the principles of only wealth, that is artha and kama, desires, and also the means for fulfilling those desires. And the price we have to pay is total despair. When we look back, when we reach 90 or 95 years old, depending upon the average longevity in different countries, when we look back, there is a long despair, long sigh. This could be avoided if you take a decision sufficiently early in life. That's why Shankaracharya compares wealth to the forms and pebbles and waves in the ocean. Now, what's the solution? The same teacher gives an interesting solution, and that is a great philosophy of life. It's not Advaita or metaphysics. That's something very interesting. Here we are not talking about Advaita or metaphysics of Brahman. We are talking about what happens around us to every one of us. The most illiterate person, also the greatest mystic. Same thing happens. The difference is that the philosopher, the wise person, takes an early decision. Others belong to two categories. Those who are forced to take a decision when they get some tragic blows in their life, and those who never open their eyes even when they're to confront unfortunate tragic events. Now, there is a solution given here. This verse comes in Shivamanasa Puja, another verse. Atmatvam girijamatihi sakachara prana shariram griham. Prana means vital energy. Pujate vishyobuboga rajana nidra samadhi sthitihi sanchara padayuhu Pradakshina vidhi stotrani sarvo gira yadyat karma karoti sattatadakhilam shambhu tavaradhanam. A very high philosophy of life is depicted in the last verse. Yadyat karma karomi tattadakhilam shambhu tadaradhanam. Whatever I do, whatever I speak, whatever I think, all days constitute one or other form of worship offered to you. But before that, he makes some statements. You are my Atman, and mother is Girijamati, mother is my mother. Whatever I do, whatever activities I do in our daily pursuit of life, office work, factory work, whatever we do in secular life, not spiritual practices alone, all these are nothing but a form of worship offered to you. And what about my sleep? My sleep also is a kind of complete absorption in you. I get completely absorbed in you. So if we can look upon whatever we do as a form of worship of the Lord, then our whole life becomes a spiritual pilgrimage. Because if you start a pilgrimage from one point, you may have to travel 2,000 miles. Once you book the ticket, that moment you really start the pilgrimage. You start thinking of going to the place. You boarding the train, boarding the plane, going there, booking the room, going to the hotel. All these activities are related to, integrated into this main goal of our journey, that is making the pilgrimage. So all these activities become sacred. Once you take a decision to make a pilgrimage, for example, to Lourdes, it involves online booking, going to the airport, boarding the plane, and all other activities involved. All these are related to one single activity, making the pilgrimage. Similarly, if we can look upon our own life as a pilgrimage, then whatever we do with our hands, whatever we think with our mind, including everyday mundane activities, which are totally unavoidable, they all become some forms of worship of the Lord. Everything gets spiritualized. There is no such thing as secular. The line of demarcation between the secular and spiritual is like a line that we draw on the water. It is only an imaginary concept, and it is sometimes very dangerous also. So in many of the religious traditions, where people think that they can please their God by doing harm to others who do not belong to their own religion, there is a strong line of demarcation, a veritable Berlin Wall between the secular and spiritual. So I can pray in my temple, and then I can do harm to everybody else at other times. 2 hours in the morning I can go to my temple and pray, and then at the other 22 hours I can do as much harm to others as possible. The 2 hours of my spiritual activity is sufficient to bribe God so that I can some kind of understanding with Him. This is the very opposite of the concept of looking upon life as a pilgrimage. So, Shankaracharya writes, Yadyat karma karomi tatad akhilam shambho tavaradhanam. Whatever I do, whatever I think, whatever word I speak, all this is a kind of pilgrimage, a worship of the Lord. Then he gives some graphic descriptions. Sanchara padayohu, pradakshina vidhi. So in ancient temples, there is a ritual. You go around a temple in clockwise, clockwise. It is called pradakshina, a circumambulation. Supposed to be a sacred ritual. Going around the temple or around the shrine. In many traditions, it's there. So when I walk, it is a kind of going around the shrine. So when you go for an evening walk, that also is a kind of circumambulation, going around the shrine. If the whole universe is an expression of God, if whole life is a pilgrimage or a worship, and if the whole phenomenon of existence is an expression of the absolute reality, then our evening walk cannot be evening walk. Evening walk also can be a kind of circumambulation, going around the temple. That is sanchara padayoga pradakshina vidhi. When we walk, it is a kind of going around the shrine, because the universe is an expression of the divine. But when we eat food, when we read, when we work in the office, whatever it is, everything becomes an expression of the divine, because the whole universe is an expression of God. Stotrani sarva gira. So gira means words. Whatever we speak, gira means words, speech. Whatever we speak, it becomes hymns in praise of the Lord. So that's one way of spiritualizing our speech. So sometimes we find in some comic plays, mostly written by atheists and agnostics, you find somebody is praying, and then by the time telephone call comes, and he uses all kinds of invectives in his conversation of the phone. Again, the telephone is put back, and again the prayer continues. So this is one modern play, mostly written by an agnostic who didn't have a very high opinion about religion as a whole. Now the idea is, there cannot be any spiritual speech or non-spiritual speech. Every speech, every word becomes spiritual, a kind of sacred hymn, psalms to the Lord. In that case, we cannot speak anything that is bad. At least while chanting, reciting the psalms, we don't curse. Similarly, if we look upon our speech as a sacred word, we cannot use any wrong word. One of our most famous monks, Swami Tattwamayananda, he was a great senior monk of the order, passed away, well-known international speaker. There is an interesting incident in his life. He was a small boy growing up in a village in Kerala. So once, perhaps when he was 4 or 5 years old, he was playing with children, and a child came back, returned home one day, and used perhaps a word which may not be acceptable, or which may not be considered to be acceptable in civilized circles, so to speak. So his mother scolded him and then told him, look here, you should not use such a word, because Mother Goddess Saraswati is the deity, goddess of learning and goddess of speech, according to Hindu tradition. She is sitting on your tongue. So don't use that. He narrates that incident. So that's why Stotrani Sarvagira means every word, every speech becomes a sacred mantra, a sacred hymn. And then Shankaracharya says, Yadyat karma karomi tatud akhilam sambhodavaradhanam. So whatever I do, whatever I speak, everything is a form of worship. So we can and we must try to turn our life into a pilgrimage. The point is, if we do not make an attempt in that direction, whether we succeed or not, if we do not make an attempt in that direction, there is always the danger of life becoming a series of disconnected, fractured, isolated events, often mutually contradictory and conflicting. And that's why sometimes at the end of the journey, at the end of life, when we become old, when we look back, we feel, well, I should have taken a decision long back. That's why the great Swami Shivananda, he was a great monk, and he was the founder of Divine Life Society. He made a statement, the wise man doesn't sit by the roadside. He takes a decision early in life. One of the statements in the devotional classic of Bhagavata, it's a very interesting statement. It comes from a boy, Prahlada, is a great devotee. So he was playing with other children. So the Kaumara Acharit Prajnaka, the intelligent man or woman, begins when he or she is young, not too old. It doesn't mean that when you get old, there is no need. It's impossible, not at all. It doesn't mean. The point is, we must try to take a decision sufficiently early in life. But remember, it's never late. It's never late. Spiritual life is the one thing where you can never become overaged. There is no such thing that you cannot apply when you reach beyond the particular. No. Spiritual life, we can begin any day, any moment, anywhere. It's only a matter of our changing our perspective to our own life. That's the idea behind. That's why in one of the famous verses attributed to a great devotee, he was 95 years old, who led a very rather undesirable kind of life. When he reached the temple, suddenly he realized, somebody asked him, oh, what a pity you didn't you didn't care to live your life properly. Admonished him. He listened to a lecture going on, this old Bhagavata Purana, ritualistic reading of sacred texts in ancient times. So listening to that, suddenly it dawned upon him, it occurred to him that he practically wasted his life. And then he just prostrated before the deity and never got up. He died because he was almost 95, 98 years old. But while prostrating, he chanted a song, chanted a hymn. He was a great scholar, he composed a hymn. The hymn is something like this. It comes in the old tradition. He refers to a number of great devotees. So he says, he refers to Dhruva, an ancient devotee who realized God within 6 months. In the Bhagavata Purana, you find that between the 4th skandha from 8 to 12th chapter, you find. So he realized God in 6 months. And then an actress suddenly played the role of a saint in a play, and that even completely converted, and she became a saint. Like that, he refers to a number of earlier saints. Finally, he says, I am only 98 years old. So if they could transform their life in one split second, I too can do that. And he never got up. It's an interesting historical event which I don't have time to narrate now. The point is this: in spiritual life, we are never late, and we are never too old or too young. We are never overaged. Any day, any moment, we can do that. So life can be a pilgrimage if we can take an intelligent, wise decision. Otherwise, as I said earlier, it could become a series of isolated, mutually conflicting and contradictory events. And it could become an adventure. It could also in many cases, become a misadventure. So, and then at the end of the journey, we may have to look back in total despair, where I have lost a golden opportunity. So, one way to avoid this disaster is to take a decision early in life. So, life can be a pilgrimage, a sacred journey, a journey towards our own true nature. If you believe in Advaita, or if you believe in monotheistic religion, a journey towards the presence of God, as you find narrated in the works of Brother Lawrence, Philokalia, and many other mystical works. Thank you. Namaskar.